Okay. We are on YouTube. Good morning, everyone.
What I can do.
Okay. Good. Marie, can you hear us? You're Marie Young. Her audio still seems to be loading. There's Austin and Judy. Who else? Anyone having trouble with audio? It looks like Don's is also taking a while to connect. Marie, can you hear us yet? Okay, now you can. Good, good. Okay, good. All right, I got it. Make sure. There we are. Okay.
We want to hear them, not that they hear us.
Oops. All right, how are we this morning? A few other folks still coming in. 10:30. And if you happen to be one of the people named iPhone, if you can change your name so we know who you are, or put it in the chat and we'll change your name for you. It's nice to know who's here. So.
This is Judy Goodman. I'm on iPhone.
You're one of the iPhones?
Yes.
Okay, let me see which. Okay.
Hello.
Is it going to let me change the name? Let me find you. And everyone, Judy, did I just mute you? Unmute if that was you.
I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted, and that is you. Okay, so I'm going to rename this. Okay, and I'm going to mute you again. Thank you. Okay. all the interesting skills that come along with learning to do worship services on Zoom. How many things can you do at one time? Ha, there we go. All right. Well, good morning. We'll get started. Hello. I'm going to ask Tom and Kristen to let folks in so I can pay attention to my slideshow and not screw anything up. I'm going to stay in this format for another moment, just so it's easier. Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Dr. Leonisa Artizone, minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Catskills. Did I mention this last week to you all in services that I have been your minister online longer than I was your minister in person? We have crossed some strange borderland where now I've been your virtual minister for longer than I was your physical in-person minister, which seems very strange to me. Thus, I felt the need to name it, just so we all know what kind of universe we're operating in. Anyway, I'm glad to see everyone here. Zoom isn't ideal, but it's what we got. And I know we're all working hard to try and keep it interesting and going. So welcome. The upside of having services on Zoom is you can invite friends and family, no matter where they reside on the planet, and join us for Sunday services. So I encourage you to invite anyone you know who is looking for a liberal religious home. Have them come and join us. That would be grand. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you are in fact new today, which I'm looking through the list, I don't know if I see any visitors yet, but please, and we'll remind you to make sure you type your name and your email into the chat box so that we can include you in our mailing lists and things that we're doing. This is also the time where we remind you to grab a candle if you want to light your own chalice during services today. Many of you who've come to the face-to-face gatherings we've had were the recipients of a cute little tea light and a little note from me. So you should be ready to create your own chalice at home. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith guided by 7 principles and 6 sources. And at UU Catskills, we live into those sources by being voices for Black Lives Matter. And you'll see my t-shirt today. Voices for immigrant justice, voices that address climate change. And I also reversed my stole today, voices in support of LGBTQ rights. I have some announcements. We have things going on. We planned some special events. Well, first, I do want to remind everyone that it is not too late to join Community Solar. If you haven't done so yet, what are you waiting for? But if you have questions, ask Jenny Giddy. Maybe you could find her during breakout time, or you can, send an email and we'll get you in touch with Jenny to sign up. It's very easy. They're incredibly helpful. I did it in all of 5 minutes. So I encourage you to do so. I want to also do another reminder for our wonderful community circles. I added some more photos because this last week, I think I've now seen everyone who came to the first round except Lake Katrine Saugerties Ring. So I have to get that circle going. But as you see, we've got some New Paltzers there. We've got 2 different groups of Woodstock, Kingston, Dutchess. So I encourage you to be part of your community circle. If you don't know where you belong in terms of your community circle, ask Christy Bellecci. If you're new, but you want to be part of a circle and you don't think you've been added to one yet, put your name and zip code in the chat and we will find you your people, as it were. So this week we will have the grief support group still is continuing on Sundays at 4. This week, Tuesday, is the Buddha Cats at 5 and Women's Circle at 7:30. And of course, we have our Vespers. I hope more people come to that. We're having a lovely time. I like it, but it's small. So I wouldn't mind more folks joining us for Vespers. And I invite you to include people from outside of our circle. Like I've been inviting my students and my colleagues across the river. This Thursday, of course, we have bedtime story, and it'll be with Jane this week. Now, we added 2 special online hangouts because I know many of us are anxious about our election, which we're going to talk about today. So on Monday evening from 7 to 9, there is an election eve vigil and hope hangout. And then on Tuesday again, 7 to 9, another hope hangout. All this information is on our website. I encourage you to check it regularly. Please go to uucatskills.org so that you can find information you need. And I just wanted to share one more time, and this is in the newsletter that's coming out to you as we speak. It's probably going to show up in your inbox. If you do have specific questions, there are certain people to reach out to. So pastoral care is me or the caring team. Sunday services, questions and volunteering goes to the worship committee. Anything administrative, you want to reach out to a member, you want to help solve a problem, you have Zoom questions, that all goes to Lori, and then she'll find you the right person. Anything big about our community, that goes to the board. And any concerns about right relations, those go to members of the Committee on Shared Ministry. And I remind you that I do take a Sabbath, but of course, emergencies arise, and I am here for you, even if it is on a day that is considered my day off, right? Just so you know. But I don't generally answer email on Monday and Saturday. So if you need me, get it in before 2 o'clock Sunday, and then I'll get back to you Tuesday morning, just so you know. Of course, like I said, if it's an emergency, you're falling apart, I will get back to you. But if not, it'll happen on Tuesday. Just want you to know. So we hope that today and every day you will be inspired by the words of James Vila Blake, who wrote these words in 1894. Love is the spirit of this faith, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Welcome into this time apart from time. And we begin with a special slide from our occasional series on this day in UU history.
Hi, I'm Rafaela Artesani Jennings, or Reverend Leonice's daughter, and I'm a student here at St. Lawrence University, where Olympia Brown attended seminary. I'm delighted to record this video at SLU and tell you a little bit more about Olympia Brown. So, on this day in 1920, 2 days before the November election of President of the United States, Olympia Brown would have been full of anticipation. She was born on January 5, 1835 in Prior Run, Michigan, to a Universalist family who valued education. Upon finishing her university studies at Annatoch College in Ohio, she decided her calling was to be a minister. After countless rejections, she accepted the Theological School of St. Lawrence University, a Universalist seminary in Canton, New York. When Brown completed her course of study in 1863, the male ministers of the St. Lawrence Universalist Association voted to ordain her. She had become known as the first woman minister whose ordination was recognized by her full denomination. Brown served the Universalist Church in Weymouth Landing, Massachusetts, and later in Bridgeport, Connecticut. She was then married in 1873, keeping her own name, and would give birth to 2 children. In 1878, she accepted a call to the church in Racine, Wisconsin. She worked to establish it as a center of learning and culture and a forum for the discussion of social issues of the time, including women's suffrage. She invited Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony to air their views from the pulpit. Under her ministry, the women began to hold offices and vote in the church. After 9 years at Racine, Brown left full-time ministry from an activist for women's rights to vote. For the next 32 years, she labored, spoke, and demonstrated on behalf of this cause. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, granting American women the right to vote, ending almost a century of protest. Yes, on this Sunday in 1920, Olympia Brown would have been looking forward to the presidential election, the first to be held after the end of World War I. She would have been filled with anticipation for on Tuesday, she would be able to vote for the first time at the age of 85. After the suffrage victory, Brown dedicated herself to promoting world peace and becoming one of the original members of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. She then died in Baltimore on October 23, 1926.
And I will add that somewhere in St. Lawrence, we've never found it though yet, that there is a plaque that says, Reverend Olympia Brown, preacher of universalism, pioneer and champion of women's citizenship rights, forerunner of the new era, the flame of her spirit still burns today. And now, Bill Toole. Thank you, Bill. We will now light our chalice.
We light this chalice in grateful, loving community.
Even in the darkest of times,
its flame like paths
to courage, justice, and hope.
And I, for one, think that when we return together back in person, we should always end our chalice lighting with a thumbs up like that. May our like paths to courage, justice, and hope. Our opening words this morning come from the Reverend Leslie Takahashi. For those who came before us, may our gratitude be long and lasting. For those who came after us, may we be the strong stewards of our commitments. May each of us know the immortality of the larger frame revealed through community. And may we always remember that its transformational power rests in our actions. Come, let us worship together. And I've chosen a hymn that I don't know if I've ever done myself with this group. And I found a lovely recording from, I'm forgetting now which congregation, but it will be on the screen. So I invite you all to listen and sing along. Okay, there it is.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
Please join me in our unison affirmation. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. All right, so today, our Not for Children Only is a slideshow I created called Myth vs. Reality, or a look back at USA history, or lies our leaders told us. So I imagine many of you in the room, in space, like history, right? Are there history buffs out there? I know there are. And it's funny because I don't really remember learning any real history in elementary school or middle school. Speaks volumes about maybe the town I was raised in. And I recall my high school history teacher being so boring that I largely slept through his classes. So I probably shouldn't share this with our young ones, but I'm probably not the only adult in this room who maybe had a hard time with some of their classes in high school. But then once I got to college, everything changed. I realized how interesting and important it is to study history and to really study history, to really dig into not just what they're telling you or teaching you, but to read beyond what the common stories are, not what they tell you to believe, but to dig in and get the rest of the story or other perspectives or digging for the truth, which oddly enough is part of our Unitarian Universalist principles. So as we sit together today, thinking about Olympia Brown breaking down barriers 2 days before an election that might be one of the most important elections in our country's history, let's look at some stories that we don't always talk about enough. So we were told, and correct me if I'm wrong, no, I'm kidding, when we were children, that the discoverers, and I'm putting that in quotes, the explorers and discoverers came to the shores of the Americas or the New World, and it was this green forested land and either One story says no one was here, or the alternate was it was a land filled with savages, right? That was what we got, a picture of the Americas. But we know that is false because this land alone, we don't even have to talk about Central and South America, but North America alone was filled with many tribal societies, which were complex, sustainable, self-sustaining societies. And many of them lived democratically, and dare I also say, matriarchally. Now, when I was a child, I was forced to memorize this little song. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And we had to learn the names of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And Christopher Columbus, was a big hero we all had to learn about, right? That's the common idea, right? Except for the fact, what we now recognize is that when Columbus arrived, armed with the doctrine of discovery, he opened the door to the greatest genocide in the history of humankind. Right here. Following suit with the Columbus myth is the Thanksgiving myth. And you've all heard me talk about this before, but that peaceful dinner between the first Americans and the native people who really helped them survive. We're invited every year to engage in a memorial of this event, to a reminder that the Puritans were kind to the native people and everyone lived all lovely together, even though we know that had the native people not generously helped the Puritans, they would not have lasted through that first winter. And sadly, our native forebears were repaid with bloodshed. And so I start this slideshow with a reminder that the Native Americans got the worst deal ever. And I particularly like this quote: "They call America the land of free because it was stolen and never paid for." Right? So this narrative is very different than what most of us got in our elementary, middle, and even high school educations, I am quite sure. So now I'm going to turn us to our founding fathers. Lin-Manuel Miranda's sanitized and faux radicalized history of these cats notwithstanding, our founding fathers are who we are supposed to look up to. Valiant, forward-thinking men who helped create this great nation. But let's remember that our founding fathers were men, only men who were supposed to revere, but rather, even those of them that had great ideas and ideologies were flawed themselves, because many of them, as we now know and learn about, were slaveholders themselves. And somehow didn't pay attention to that detail when they were writing this whole all men are created equal. And they also left women out of the equation too. And these are the folks who were seemingly okay with a level of dehumanization like this, treated people like this. So let's move to religion, because hey, it's Sunday, right? Now, after all those wonderful egalitarian teachings of Jesus, the church, and I'm using this in the sense, the formalized church, which is originally the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox churches, decided that only men could lead religious services. They found ways to manipulate scripture to make this practice last for a very, very, very long time, even though we actually have ancient artistic evidence that women were also leaders of the early Christianity and non-Christian as well. They were priestesses, religious leaders, followers of Jesus themselves. But that detail seems to get left out of the conversation. And then, of course, we jump forward almost 1900 years. And that's why Olympia Brown is such a hero to women like me, who were raised in religions who told them they could never be leaders in the religion, and yet this woman made it possible. Ministry was her thing. She went on to become the first woman in any denomination to be ordained. And as we heard in our story earlier, it was a group of men who voted to ordain her. So they realized her value as well and the importance of opening the ministry to women. She actively pushed back against the notions of women having a particular place. And I personally love the fact that in the 1800s, she bucked convention and kept her own name after marriage. And Olympia Brown and others were pushing back against this ideology that we hear so much of and is actually coming back to the fore again, that women are supposed to be in the home, that allegedly is said somewhere in the Bible. And well, we're not going to dwell on that. And for 200 plus years on these shores, women were sold this bill of goods and made all the more enticing by a 1950s ad efforts to sell appliances and other wonderful things that could make women make sure they remembered where their place was. But as Rose Wilder Lane points out, the effort to control women was a direct response to women fighting for equal rights, including voting rights, right? Sadly, as women were considered second-class citizens and they didn't have rights, they were often subjugated and subjected to forms of violence, and they were treated as property and at the whims of the men who held them as property. But thankfully, as we mentioned earlier, women like the Reverend Olympia Brown and many other Unitarians and Universalists and from all other religions fought for equal rights for women. And most importantly, as we face an election in 2 days, voting rights. It's our 100th year of acknowledging this. If a society is to represent all people, then all people must have the right to vote. The suffragettes were jailed, and in their efforts to not only fight for the right to vote, they also had to fight for their sisters who were being wrongfully imprisoned. But of course, that is also an issue because as the voting rights movement for women was underway, white women marginalized Black women in the process, a pattern that would appear again in the 60s and 70s during the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment. But Black women, we must remember, are and will always be necessary and important voices in the struggle for equality, which we still have yet to fully see. But this was on my calendar as I flipped to November 1st this morning, and I'm inspired by this image of women from different eras in time, breaking down barriers, showing us the way, how we can fight for equality on all fronts. And as we know, we are not done yet. And that is where all of us fit in. We have to remind ourselves of the work of our predecessors, but also remember that the wrongs of the past that they were fighting against have not been sufficiently addressed. And that's where we come in. So with some of these issues on our mind and an awareness that we are here today preparing for an election, preparing to think about how we move forward in Unitarian Universalism and righting the wrongs of the past, I want us to focus on ourselves for a moment. I've used the upcoming language a little bit, but I've decided to present it as a whole. My minister, the minister that was my first Unitarian Universalist minister who helped me hear my call, the Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, who is now the president of Starr King School for the Ministry. I believe the first woman, nope, second woman, but first Black woman to be the president of Starr King. I think I should check my history, but I'm almost positive. She led this ritual on Sunday as part of our contemplation and compassion. And I would like to share it with you. So I'd like everyone to get comfortable. Put your feet on the floor. Take a few deep centering breaths and really come into this contemplative space. As we enter this time for compassion and contemplation, we begin by calling to mind those times of failure and regret common to all of us. We remember in silence those times when we have failed to do that all we were meant to do, or through our actions failed to be all we were meant to be. We now recall moments of integrity, those times we have lived into our deepest values and acted as the human beings we always dreamed of being. In silence, bring those times of integrity to mind now. We choose at this moment to lay down the burden of our shortcomings and grasp the courage to begin anew. Together we affirm our capacity for goodness and grace, for freedom and purpose and joy. We are not trapped in our past, but freed by creation to live and grow today. With gratitude, we say, blessed be and amen. One of the things and one of the ways we live into this community is by sharing our gifts. I know many of you do volunteer work all around our counties that we draw from. I know many of you have been writing postcards, letters, making phone calls. I know many of you help one another in this community with rides, delivering groceries, phone calls to make sure we are all okay. And we also do a wonderful job of sharing financial resources with organizations that are doing good and important work in our direct area. This month, 5 Sundays of November, the beginning of this month, we are happy and pleased to share our plate with the Boys and Girls Club of Ulster County. I encourage you now during this time as we raise awareness of the need for us to work together to support our community and those most in need, to give generously. And I decided to record a Rodgers and Hammerstein song. I've been working on an arrangement for it, and I thought it felt right for today's theme. So here is a recording of You've Got to Be Carefully Taught to inspire you to give deeply.
taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made, and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught.
Thank you for your generosity and your work at UU Catskills and beyond. I'm now going to invite and spotlight Kristen to share our reading for today.
This is an excerpt from The Men of 76, a sermon given by Reverend Olympia Brown in the Universalist Church, Bridgeport, Connecticut, on February 25th, 1876. There is a tendency in men to idolize the past. The wrongs of an age, its cowardice, its littleness, its troubles and perplexities pass away with the time and are in a great measure forgotten. Only the salient points, the strong characters, the great deeds stand out against the horizon of the historian, and these he beholds enlarged and enveloped in a halo of glory because he sees them through the magnifying lens of time. Whether our glance be forward through glittering archways, illumined by hope, or backward through the mellowing shadows of memory, still 'tis distance lends enchantment to the view. Human characters loom up grand and symmetrical in their proportions, clad in a vesture of beauty and loveliness when seen through the vista of 100 years. And just in proportion, as we exaggerate the virtue of the past, we belittle the excellencies of our own day. We see more painfully revealed the weakness, folly, and sinfulness of our time. Thus, in every age, men are looking back to a period of heroism and bravery long gone by. Each nation finds among its ancestors, the founders of the state, some names which are handed down from father to son, idolized, almost deified, and which grow brighter and brighter as each succeeding generation adds something more of traditional glory to the past, until at last these names come to have a mysterious talismanic power, stimulating to noble behavior, rousing to heroic action, and even warding off danger.
Thank you, Kristen. So Olympia Brown wrote those words in 1876, almost 150 years ago, as she looked back on the founding year of the United States. She, as a true universalist, warned her flock about idolizing the founders, venerating history, lionizing heroic behavior, lest we fall into a trap of thinking that the past was, is, will always be better, that in over honoring the past, we forget the work in front of us. Our country is flawed, deeply flawed. Our history of systemic violence has taken, in turn, to subjugating and oppressing groups of people based on their relative humanity. The native peoples of this land, the African and Afro-Caribbean people that were enslaved, women who were never meant to be equal citizens, immigrants from all parts of the world who, until they were lucky enough to become white, were treated like invaders, not to be trusted, and on and on. As our history shows, any group from around the world that either got in our way of colonization and dominion or our efforts to strip resources from places less civilized, or any place that appeared to somehow upset the rule of the white, heteronormative, patriarchal Christian society we valued most, we invaded, slaughtered, conquered, subjugated, pillaged, assassinated, whatever it took to claim our superiority. I sometimes think that the tumult, suffering, and corrupt, self-serving, hateful leadership we see in this country today is a form of cosmic payback for 500 years of bloodshed and nearly 150 straight years of killing and wreaking havoc around the world. If you weren't aware, the United States has been in a near constant state of war since our founding. We have invaded peaceful countries, toppled democracies and historic indigenous societies, created unnecessary bloodshed, deliberately destabilized countries and continents, all in the name of capitalism and conquest. We are now getting a taste of our own medicine. But that's not the end of the story. I think it is important that we acknowledge the truth of the United States of America instead of hiding behind the myth of American exceptionality, because in doing so, we can learn from the past and move forward with clearer eyes. When Olympia Brown attended St. Lawrence Theological Seminary and became an ordained minister, she started a revolution, a shift in a tide that upset almost 2,000 years of saying that women could not and should not lead religious services. She went on to leave the pulpit and write volumes about the role of women in society and the importance of women having the right to vote to be equal members of society. She, as we know, was not alone. Over the past 150 years, people have been standing up and saying, this is wrong, and we need to fix this. And inch by inch, changes were made. And yet, here we are in 2020, still living in a society that divides, that values white life more than Black or brown life, that values Christianity more than secular morality, that values heteronormative love more than queer love, that values a romanticized, monolithic, violent, and exceptional image of the United States more than the truly democratic, inclusive, and accepting vision that many of us hear and see in the opening lines of our Constitution. We teach children lies in school. We perpetuate those lies by honoring heroes and holidays that actually cause harm. We allow capitalism and corruption to run roughshod over social supports and networks. We don't give voice to the voiceless. And this is the heart of the problem. When we are too blinded by our own grandiosity, too enamored of who we think we are or proclaim to be, or too beholden to an aggrandized past, we can never truly see the harms we have caused and thus we will certainly never see a new way forward. Now, I personally am not interested in living in a US that looks like a redux of the 1950s or the 1850s, or heck, as some people might want it, the 1750s. I believe most people think like me. Maybe that's my cockeyed optimism, thinking positively, which is not usually in my character, is it? No. I think the uptick in voter turnout is a clear demonstration of the recognition that we are in fact sliding into fascism, and that people do believe in democracy and will do what they can to save it. I found these words from political analyst Heather Cox Richardson inspiring. She wrote them just yesterday, I believe. Our nation faces headwinds for sure. We simply must get the coronavirus pandemic under control and then address the extremes of wealth and poverty in this country. Fixing healthcare, systemic racism and sexism, climate change and education, all must be on the table as we move firmly into the 21st century. It sounds like a daunting list, but after years of apathy, while a few wealthy Americans tighten their grip on the nation, Americans have woken up to the fact that democracy is not a spectator sport. We are taking back our country, and once we have done so, we will find that no problem is insurmountable. We cannot make the world a better place. We cannot make the United States the country it has the potential to be unless we recognize our failings and vow to remedy them. Righting the wrongs of the past call us to do a few things. First, to critically analyze the history of this nation and the stories we sell ourselves and our children about our own history, even when, or maybe especially when, it requires us to be critical of experiences that have privileged us in some way. Second, upon reflection and analysis, when we see and can see the ills of the past, we must name them. We get into dialogue about them with others. We listen to the voices of those who have felt the harm, and we support them. And then, as a people of faith committed to truth, justice, peace, liberty, equality, environmental security, and human rights, we fight like all get out to usher in a new system that doesn't play phony lip service to these things, but really, truly works to create the world we want to live in. As universalists, we are called to fight for the equal rights of all, for women to decide what they do with their bodies, for all people to decide who they love and who they can marry and have the right to do so, for all people to have religious freedom and not impose their beliefs on others, nor have others' beliefs imposed upon them, for the descendants of the enslaved and slaughtered on this land to have reparations, and for this land to truly live into those words printed on the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. We Unitarian Universalists are a people of bridges, not walls. We are a people of community, not division. We are a people of care, not harm. We are a people of healing, not infliction. We are universalists, not particularists. We are a people of love, not hate. We are the ones we've been waiting for. No change comes if we are not willing to be part of it. And we do this by voting. We do this by living into these values in our own religious community and in our local communities. We do this by changing how we educate and what we teach our children, both in and out of school. We do this by doing the work of healing within ourselves and with those we see being harmed. We do this by humbly asking for help and guidance when we need it. We do this by showing up every day for those who call upon us. May we be the universalists the country needs now. May it be so. And in the spirit of oneness, we're going to sing We Would Be One.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Thank you, Catherine. And I believe Catherine and Ella were part of that. Thank you for that. Thank you all for being here today. Our closing words come from Miguel de Unamuno. Unamuno, I like that name. Entitled, Throw Yourself Like Seed. Throw yourself like seed. Sorry, I said that already. Shake off this sadness and recover your spirit. Sluggish, you will never see the wheel of fate that brushes your heel as it turns going by. The man who wants to live is the man in whom life is abundant. Now you are only giving food to that final pain, which is slowly winding you in the nets of death. But to live is to work, and the only thing which lasts is the work. Start there, turn to the work. Throw yourself like seed as you walk and into your own field. Don't turn your face, for that would be to turn it to death. And do not let the past weigh down your motion. Leave what's alive in the furrow, what's dead in yourself. For life does not move in the same way as a group of clouds. From your work, you will be able one day to gather yourself. So we will extinguish our chalice, sing our benediction. So if you have your chalice ready. Oh, actually, I keep forgetting that I like showing this covenant slide here. I won't read it today, but I've been keeping it because I think it's a really good reminder of who we are, what we believe in, and the work we're called to do. Now, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Take a moment to put yourself on gallery view. Scroll through so you can see one another and wave to one another.
Hi.
I am grateful that you are all here. It is wonderful to see you. I mean it. I hope you're all feeling inspired. I hope to see you at our Hope Hangouts, because I am visualizing the future I want to see for all of us and for our kids here, my own kids everywhere in the world. So let's all think positively, be together. I love you. I miss you. Let's go into breakout rooms though. Please do. Oh, I want to say this. Like, if you're visiting and you're self-conscious, don't be. We're nice people. Like, don't be afraid to go into a breakout room, right?
Yeah.
Introduce ourselves and get to know each other. So it's a nice way to catch up. So yeah, make sure you scroll through and we all get to say hi. And then I'll jump us all into some breakout rooms so we can visit with one another. Sound good?
Hi.
Yeah.
If you have any questions or
That's
thoughts,
wonderful.
pop them in the chat as I'm doing this. Oh, that's excellent. Now, okay, that's going to take me an extra minute. So you can chat while I get the young people with Jane.